Hi, my name is Erica Goldstein, and I'm here interviewing artist Paul Fuentes today on behalf of Alpha Art Gallery's Summer 2020 Oil and Mixed Media Exhibition Encounters.
I went to the Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia, graduate. I went straight to New York. I got hired at NBC, and even though I was trained in advertising design, communication design, what used to be called graphic design, I got right into television. For whatever reason, they hired me to do TV designs. So I did that. I was there for a while. I went to HBO. From there, I became a creative director. And while I was at HBO, I began directing because I also, when I went to New York, was doing acting in some plays in the city. So the two things kind of dovetail, the acting and the directing. And it led me into a career of directing for television and commercials. But I always painted because I'm basically an art school grad. So I suppose the one has influenced the other.
So how did you decide you wanted to go to art school in the first place? And then what kind of informed your transition from visual arts to TV? Or was it more of just a natural progression?
It seemed to be a natural progression, but I always drew. From the time I was a kid, I always drew. I always had stacks of papers stashed under a sofa or under a chair. When everyone else would be watching TV, I would lie on the floor and I would draw. And I would create kind of the equivalent of Marvel characters. And I had Agents of Tornado, which was the trusted organization responsible for necessary assistance during oppression. So they fought bad guys throughout the world.
That was your own creation?
That was my own creation.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
like when I was in like the third grade.
Uh-huh.
And then I also at one point drew cartoon characters all over my classmates' yellow raincoats. And that was the first time I realized I could be sought after as an artist. But that night, my mom got many calls from mothers who were not happy that the kids had ballpoint pen drawings of Roadrunner and Flintstones.
Right.
But it kind of made me think, wow, I could be sought after for doing this stuff, because none of my friends could.
What inspired you to choose oil eventually as your medium of choice?
Well, you know, when you're in art school, you do oil painting, but because you have to do foundation courses. But I got immediately into my major being advertising and communication design. And that becomes a career of technical proficiency. You're always in edit rooms or your things are pixels and you need a crew and you need post-production supervision. And I reached a point where I just wanted to create my own things simply. I didn't want to always be reliant on chargers or screens. And I had an opportunity to dig out my paints and canvases and turpentine, and I loved it. I love the simplicity of it. In this era of everything being so digital and technical, it's just wonderful to actually smell turpentine, to get your hands dirty, to not have to worry about charging my canvas. You know, you can do it anywhere, anytime. And plus the tradition goes, you know, back to cave painting. It's kind of wonderful. I feel part of a tradition. And the simplicity of it is wonderful. And
Right.
I also just recently got an iPad Pro, and now I'm doing digital illustration and digital paintings. It's completely different and it's a little difficult to work with, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, you kind of get the best of both worlds that way, which is fun. So are there any traditional artists that you look up to as a visual artist, and then vice versa? Are there any people in the TV world that you look up to that you feel like have informed your career in that way?
Sure. Well, there are many traditional artists. I mean, going all the way back, Velázquez, Caravaggio for lighting, Courbet, Degas, Sargent. Sargent was a huge influence in my life. It actually got me into painting people, which is about my favorite thing to paint is people. And as far as how commercials or production or advertising affected my life, I worked with many cinematographers, really some of the best guys who shot Edward Scissorhands and Titanic. And I was so impressed with the focus on lighting that it affects everything in my life now. I make paintings based on a lit scene that I see. The way they would arrange lights and flags to get proper, you know, and the light, the contrast, it's so expressive. It's so expressive of a mood in a TV scene that I can't now think of lighting when I do anything, especially with painting. Those combinations, and there's modern masters. I love Richard Prince, and there's an abstract artist, Christina Quarles. Victor Castillo does a lot of dark stuff. Richard Diebenkorn does incredible abstraction. Even though I'm not an abstract painter, he makes me wish I could be.
So would you say that light is a big inspiration for you as an artist, and does it
I honestly think it's everything.
Would you say that it informs the way that you choose your subjects for your paintings as well?
Yes. Lighting and the subject matter, usually, as I said, people. As I said, I was interested in acting, and I studied, and I was in plays. And the thing about acting is always talk less, it's doing. And people are affected by a gesture, a pose. One of my acting teachers once said that you can go to Russia and look out a bus window and see two people having an argument without knowing what they're saying, because it's all about expression. And it's all about expression in painting too. John Sargent's paintings say so much, just the way a person sits, the way they look out a window. The lighting and the people fascinate me. I just study them all the time.
Do you catch yourself painting just these everyday scenes that you see based on light that inspires you?
I do,
Wow.
yeah. I think one of the pieces that's in your show, it's called the Hermes Scarf, just solely inspired by that late day sun blasting through a window. And I defy anyone to have that feeling at the end of a day or a summer afternoon when you came off the beach and maybe before you have a cocktail, that great feeling in the air. It's universal. You know, Joaquin Sorolla painted Kids on the Beach with that beautiful lighting. It just hits something inside us, I think. So I look for those.
What is it about the concept of identity that drew you towards using it as the focal point of your work? And how does your own identity come into play in your art with the identities of the figures that you're painting?
It was always clearly established. It is who we are. You know, there's a poem by J. Alfred Prufrock. We present a face to meet the faces that we meet. And we all do that. And then people like Cindy Sherman came along, who I love, Cindy Sherman. And she became a shapeshifter. She presented identity as a masquerade. It's malleable. It's something you don't have to stay locked to. And I think that combination of her influence and the fact that I deal very often with directing celebrities or stars, and after doing it for so long, you see their world it's such a facade. And I don't mean it in a negative sense. That's what they choose to do.
No, I understand.
It's pretend. And I suddenly realized there is no there. I mean, as far as identity, you know, an actor is always assuming a new role, and it's always in the world of pretend. There's no lockdown. It can be anything. I can paint Putin as St. Francis and, you know, put a t-shirt on him that says "Sun's out, guns out," and get all kinds of different meanings. But, you know, I think that comes from advertising. And I think guys like Warhol did it. Advertising teaches you that strange thing of creating attention, gaining interest, and creating desire. So you kind of do a shorthand to create subject matter.
Do people compare your work to Warhol's in the way that advertising culture is kind of weaved throughout, or not? That's more of your own personal?
I've had it mentioned, grabbing the pop images of these very famous people, but then changing them up. So it's maybe a little Warhol and it's maybe a little Cindy Sherman, but you know, again, those are huge influences. I wish I could have all of their talent, but they are definitely influences.
Your background in commercials and in the TV world, how has it influenced the subjects that you choose to explore and how you explore the identity that you do in your works?
I think that advertising draws out a certain irreverence in people. In advertising, when you work with art directors or writers, there's always a little bit, you know, it's almost just a little Philip Marlowe. There's always a little cigarette smoking and poking fingers at pomposity and nobility and noble gesture, because they kind of view it sometimes as being, oh, come on, that's just a big cliche. So you can get bitter and you can get a little jaundiced. But the other good side of it is there is a radar out for after a career in advertising to avoid cliches. You don't really want to paint that woman in a diaphanous gown looking out the window one more time because it's been painted 500,000 times. So it created in me a little bit of a feeling of like, I want to avoid the tried and true times a million. I want to try and shake it up a little bit. And I think contrast in art is a great leveler. It's a great way to initiate something. You take something you know well, and then you change the dynamic and you switch it around. And in advertising, that's done all the time. You know, you're just always upsetting sensibilities just to get somebody's attention. For better or worse, it has affected the way I create my art. I hope sometimes it isn't too slick, because I also go back to the masters who I need to level things off. But I know Warhol was big in advertising. There's some other guys I know, I can't think of them right now. Who was the guy who did the fighting executives, you know, that dressed in the suits?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't have the...
I can't remember. But I mean, those kinds of irreverent notions, I think, come from the school of advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the kind of the rigidity of a traditional art education that you have, or the traditional art world, like you're saying, the masters, versus the TV world, which is constantly changing and constantly intending to evolve to fit our society. What similarities and differences do you personally see between the two, having worked in both?
I think it's actually Jekyll and Hyde. You have days where I will see a Vermeer painting and I'll just say, oh my God, I want to paint something like that. And I'll stage something and I'll do it. And then I'll have another day where I'll see some Victor Castillo thing with cartoon characters mourning the death of Mighty Mouse. And then all of a sudden that makes me crack up laughing. I do go back and forth. I don't know what to say. It's always a push-pull.
In the TV world, are there any advertising masters, executives, or branding that you really feel like have influenced your work?
There are. The thing with the TV world and advertising is it changes so much that I can be so influenced by Joe Pitka's 1984 Apple commercial that now seems, even though it was groundbreaking, it seems a little dated. That's the problem with it. You go through these phases. In my work in commercials, if I have a spot that appears on my reel over a year, an agent will say, you know, you got to get rid of that. And you'll say, well, why? It just won an award. Everybody loves it. You say, no, but it's a year old now. You gotta get some. So that's the thing. I can name great advertising pioneers, but the basic thing about advertising is just the constant evolution. In a way, it's like New York City. New York City never keeps its historical buildings. It never keeps the restaurants that you love. You love a restaurant, you go to it 3 times and then it's gone because someone else has taken over. That's the thing that it kind of keeps you on your toes. And you either love that or you say, I can't deal with that. I have done it so long that I do kind of love it. Though I wish I could say, oh, it was really this spot. That spot's probably 5 years old and it's already out of date. So it's just always keeping on your toes, always being aware of visual input, ever changing. It's kind of fun.
Sure. Yeah, that is fun. I just think it's very fascinating, the big difference that I see in the two worlds that you kind of straddle. It's very interesting. I'm a marketing major. I have
great.
double minors in art history and digital communication and media.
You're going to go through the same thing.
Yeah, so I'm all ears right now.
Yeah, you're going to go through the same thing because you're going to have that great classical background, and then you're going to have the flip side that's just going to be saying change new, better, faster.
So how do you choose the figures that you choose to depict in your works, the famous ones and the not famous ones?
I guess it goes back to a little bit of puncturing pomposity, especially when they're in the news all the time and people are so intense, and press and the media. It might come from my old Italian family. They're always punching holes in pomposity also. But there's something about you just need to just say, we have to smile at this. We just have to, I have to take Hillary out and I put her in a Tallulah Bankhead, which is an old theater star from the 40s, wardrobe, and put her in a pose that you would never think. That's kind of thoughtful. You don't really read what it's about. I think the title is My Heart New Opened, which is from a Shakespeare line. You just have to shake it up. You know, Trump is always tweeting and he's an influencer, but I put Winnie the Pooh on his shoulder. He could influence in a bad way the most gentle, kindest cartoon character. I guess I'm making comments on the Greek chorus. I do make comments. Sometimes I just can't take things too seriously. That's why I do it.
Yeah, I like this term you keep using, puncturing, pomposity. Did you coin that yourself, or is that something that I've been unaware of?
I couldn't possibly have. I mean, I think I just made it up, but I know I heard it someplace.
So do you feel like you have faced backlash from more traditional artists or the more traditional art world?
They may have backlash against me, and I hope they don't, because I greatly respect traditional subject matter. And in fact, I'm just exploring that more, because you kind of get out of your tickle mode and you want to do something serious. And I just did, I think one of the pieces that's kind of behind me there is, it's almost finished. It's the woman just looking into the woods there. I do want to do that work also. I just don't want to be, you know, the comic paint. I do a little bit of it, but I do it as much as ideally as much as, let's say, Warhol, who did kind of the same thing, putting makeup on Chairman Mao. So I prefer it to not be yuck kind of stuff. I think Cindy Sherman does it. You know, her work, a lot of her work draws a smile, but it also has some power.
What do you feel like is specifically unique about your voice as an artist in this time?
The only answer I can come up with is I don't know what my voice is. I think I let other people will make that decision. I do know that everything I paint, I'm happy to say I'm 100% committed to while I'm doing it. I really believe it's 100% truthful in my mind while I'm working on it, and I finish it to completion with 100% commitment. I don't know why things influence me in the moment. I've had people, when I started painting, say, what are you doing? What is that about? But it's just something that I have to do this painting now. In other words, I don't really set out to do something that is going to appeal to everyone and I'll make, you know, this will be something hot and this is really going to sell. I don't do that.
So what's next for Paul Fuentes? What kind of new mediums are you looking into? What new subject matter? Where can your work be seen in the future?
Well, I've been influenced a lot by painters who are wonderful at creating moods. There's a painter, Alex Russell Flint, and he just creates these lovely moods. He does women hitchhiking and they're only lit by headlights, and it just captures a moment that it's kind of filmic. There's some other guys who do the same thing. I kind of did it with that one back there. Then I'm thinking of calling it, you know, and then she stole his coat, which is, you know, it's a little bit of a narrative. I do like the idea of a narrative. I like the idea of a pose of a person that kind of tells a story. Richard Prince does it with his Nurses series. There's a painter, a French painter, Claire Tabouret, who I love her work. She's very bold with colors and compositions, and they all seem to say something. I think I'm doing more of that, and at this point, getting away from the pop icon imagery.